Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we'll see the introduction to object-oriented programming concepts. Since we write program in C++, so we'll write procedure-oriented programming and that object-oriented programming both. So now we'll see this object-oriented programming. In this video, we'll see that what is procedure-oriented programming, what is object-oriented programming, and what are the differences between this object-oriented programming as well as this procedure-oriented programming. What are the concepts also, applications of the object-oriented programming, advantages and the disadvantages. So let's start with this video. First of all, we'll see this what is the introduction part of this object-oriented programming. You can see this object-oriented programming is a principle of design and development of program by using this modular approach, right? Object-oriented programming approach provides the advantage in creation and development of software for real-time applications. The basic element of object-oriented programming is the data, because will involve this member functions as well as this member variables both. The program are built by combining data and the functions that operate on the data. Because when we start writing a program, we need to create the class. After creating the class, within the body of this class, we have to declare the member variables as well as its member functions. Some of the object-oriented programming languages are C++, Java, C#, Smalltalk, Perl, and this Python. Now we'll see what is this procedural-oriented programming, that is based on the C programming. Procedural programming focuses on the processing of instructions in order to perform a desired computations. So, it is a step-by-step process, you can say. This is also known as top-down concepts to decompose the main method. Because any program which will be started, that will always started with this top-down approach. That means we'll write the main function first and then we have to start with this input, process and the output. Functions into lower level components for modular coding purpose. Therefore, it emphasizes more on doing things like algorithms. So, it works according to the algorithm, that means the procedure you can say. This technique is used in conventional programming that you can say that C or you can say the Pascal. So basically that procedural oriented programming is based on C and this object oriented programming is based on that C++. Now we'll see what is object oriented programming. Object oriented programming is a concept that combine both data and the functions that operate on the data into a single unit which is called as object. So whenever we start any object-oriented programming, we need to declare the member functions as well as the member variables, and that member variable will be called later when the object will be created. An object is a collection of a set of data which is known as member data, and the functions that operate on these data are known as member functions. So remember, you should remember two things, that is called as one member data and another is called as member functions. Because whenever we create any member, any class, within the class we have to declare the member data as well as this member functions both. Object-oriented programming follows this bottom-up approach, or you can say bottom-up techniques. That means any program will be started with a class and object. So member functions definition will come after this declaration of the member data as well as this member function, and then at the end the main function will come, and that's what is known as bottom up approach. Class is a major concept that plays important role in this approach. Class is the template that represents a group of objects which share common properties and the relationships. Now we'll see some differences between this procedural oriented programming as well as this object oriented programming. Large programs are divided into the smaller programs known as functions, that is in case of procedural oriented programming. In case of object oriented programming, the programs are divided into the objects because we need to create the objects, and objects are used to call the member functions. Data is not hidden and can be accessed by the external functions in procedural oriented programming. But in case of object oriented programming, data is hidden and cannot be accessed by the external functions because one of the features of this object oriented programming in C++. Procedural oriented programming follows the top-down approach in the program design, and object oriented programming follows this bottom-up approach in the program design. In procedural oriented programming, that data may communicate with either through these functions, but here you know that objects may communicate with either each other through the functions, because at the end we are creating the objects. An object will be used to call all the member functions which is declared within the body of the class. Procedure-oriented programming emphasizes on the data. It is emphasizes on the procedure rather than the data. But this object-oriented programming emphasizes on data rather than the procedures. Now you can see that these are the different concepts of object-oriented programming. These are the basic concepts: objects, class, abstraction, data encapsulation, inheritance, objects, class, data abstraction, data encapsulation, inheritance, overloading, polymorphism, dynamic binding, as well as this message passing. So these are the basic concepts. Now we'll see that what are the different concepts. Objects are the basic building block for designing the program. This is also known as it is an instance of a class, you can say. So an object is a collection of data, members, and associated member functions. So whenever we create any class, we have to create the objects, and it is a collection of data members and the member functions. An object may represent a person, place, or a table of the data, and each object is identified by a unique name, and each object must be a member of a particular class. So for example, you are creating any class as fruit, right? So these are the member functions, these are the member variables, or these are the other objects, right? Apple, orange, and the mango. And see, this is the process for creating the class. After creating the class, for example, we'll create a student class. We need to declare the data members as well as this member functions. So data members are the name, roll number, as well as the course, and the member functions are this get data as well as this display. Coming to the second concept of object-oriented programming, this is classes. The object can be made user-defined data types. Objects can be made user-defined data types with the help of the class. So in short, you can define any class. It is a collection of objects, or you can say it is a collection of similar type of objects that have identical properties, common behavior, and the shared relationships. See, once the class is defined, any number of objects of that class is created. So classes are user-defined data types, and the class can hold both data and the functions. Here you can see this is data and functions. So it can hold the data and the functions. You can see, for example, planet, sun, moon are the member of the class solar system. Coming to the next concept, this is called as data abstraction and encapsulation. See, the data abstraction refers to the process for representing essential features without including the background details or you can say the explanations. So sometimes we don't want to show all the features of the class, right? In that case, we require the data abstraction property. Coming to the next concepts, data encapsulation. Data encapsulation enables the data hiding as well as the information hiding, you can say. Or in other words, you can say the wrapping up of data and the functions into a single unit is called as data encapsulation. Data hiding is a method which is used in our object-oriented programming to hide the information within the computer code. Next concept is inheritance. See, the inheritance is the process by which one object can acquire and use the property of another object, or where one object can acquire the property of another object. It may acquire 100% property or it may acquire some of the properties. So the existing class is known as the base class, or you can say the superclass. And the new class is known as derived class, or you can say this subclass. So the derived class shares some of the property of the base class. Therefore, the code can be base class, right? And that can be reused by the derived classes. So here you can see this is the base class. So this is the class which is being inherited, right? And derived 1 and derived 2. These are the two classes, two new classes which are derived from this base class. So base class is also known as parent class, it is also known as superclass. Derived class is also known as subclass as well as the child class, both. There are multiple different types of inheritance, so we can see in the chapters. The next concept is polymorphism. What is a polymorphism? The ability of an operator and a function to take multiple forms is known as polymorphism. Or you can say the ability to take more than one form is known as polymorphism. Different types of polymorphism are, that the operator overloading as well as this function overloading. Now you can see this example here. For example, we are creating a function as a shape, right? Now the shape can be a triangle, a shape can be a rectangle, or the shape can be a circle. Again I repeat, it can be a triangle, it can be a rectangle, or it can be a circle. But all the three types are a shape only. It is only differentiated on the basis of this behavior. Because when you find out this area of a triangle, the formula is different. When you find out the area of the rectangle, formula is different. When you find out the area of a circle, a formula is different. The next concept is data binding and message passing. Data binding is what? It is a process of connecting one program to another program. Data binding, dynamic binding is the process of linking the procedural call to a specific sequence of code, or you can say a function at runtime or during the execution of the program. Coming to this point, message passing, the last concept of this object-oriented programming. In object-oriented programming, processing is done by sending messages to the objects. A message for an object is request for the execution of the procedures. So basically at the end, when we write the object name dot the member function name, again if you are having some parameters, so that the parameter is the information to whom you are sending this informations. So message passing involves the specifying the name of the object. So always we write the name of the object, the name of the function, that I can say that's member function, and the information to be sent in form of in terms of, you can say, the parameters or the variables. So these are the concepts of object oriented programming in C++. Now we'll see that what are the advantages of object-oriented programming. Programs are modularized based on the principle of classes and objects, because any program will write that is based on the class and objects. Linking code and object allows related objects to share common code, and that reduces the code duplication and the code reusability. Creation and implementation of object-oriented programming code is easy and reduces the software development time when we are using this object-oriented programming concepts. Concept of data abstraction separates object specification and the object implementation. Data encapsulated along with the functions, so the external non-member functions cannot access or modify data because of this encapsulation property. Easier to develop complex software because complexity can be minimized to the inheritance because of this reusability. Object-oriented programming can communicate through the message passing, which makes interface description with outside system very simple. So these are the advantages of object-oriented programming concepts. Now we'll see what are there are some disadvantages of object-oriented programming. Larger program size, you can say. Object-oriented programming typically involves more lines of code than the procedural programs. Sometimes it is slower. So slower programs, object-oriented programming typically slower than the procedural-oriented programming concepts because it requires more instructions to be executed. The next disadvantage is it is not suitable for all the type of program, you can say. To convert a real-time program into object-oriented program is difficult when we are using this object-oriented programming concepts. Object-oriented programming software development, debugging and testing tools are not standardized while we are writing a program using C++. Polymorphism and dynamic binding also requires processing time due to overload of function calls during at runtime. Because we have to overload the functions, we have to also overload the operators, so it requires time while it is processing. So these are the disadvantages of object-oriented programming concepts. There are some applications of object-oriented programming. It is used in computer graphics applications. It is also useful in this CAD/CAM softwares. Object-oriented databases also we can use. It is used for user interface design such as Windows. It is applicable in real-time systems, simulation and modeling, artificial intelligence and export systems, and client-server systems. So these are the applications of object-oriented programming concepts. So thank you everyone for watching my video. If you like the video, you can subscribe it. Thank you.